All right, so I already have done a lot of typing, so I thought I'd throw together a quick video. It'll just be around 8 minutes or so. The first thing I am going to talk about is chapter one, uh, and it referenced a memory or experience that you had learning new vocabulary words when you're younger or when you're older. Well, when I first got into this program, there was a lot of talk in my methods classes about pedagogy, and I had no idea what the professors were talking about. So it shows just how little I knew about teaching when I first started. So I actually looked up the word or the definition as well, and learned that it was the method and practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or a theoretical concept. So it shows that. Children are obviously learning a lot more vocabulary words and learning new meanings all the time, but you still are learning new words as you get older too. So, uh, as for chapter one of the interesting things I thought uh, was the three-tier framework. It made a lot of sense. A lot of the sight words were in the first tier. We're talking about like run, talk, swim, look. Then tier two, you're just talking about words maybe parents are saying uh, to children or they're hearing like on TV and the news. Proceed, retrospect, circumstances, and then a third tier, a little more complicated, filibuster, epidermis. I know that skin. Filibuster has something to do with lawmaking. Pantheon. That one I'm going to have to look up. I'm not quite sure about that one. But I found in my own personal experience, the best way that I expanded my vocabulary was through writing. Um, Writing was the best way for me to do that, especially creative writing. I didn't want my writing uh, to be mundane or just boring. So I would look a lot of words up in the thesaurus. That was a big help. I know in on Microsoft Word it's Shift F7. So if you're still wondering how to do it, Shift F7 to find that thesaurus. And now another part I found interesting was the stages, the different stages that they're talking about. Because I know in my group this morning we talked about sequence of events, and I work with first grade class at Borlaug, and when I mentioned sequence of events, there was a few blank stares. I think a lot of them were probably in stage two, and now stage one is never saw it before. Stage two heard it, but don't know what it means. Stage three is recognizes in context as having something to do with, and for stage four is knows it well. I think one student was probably in stage three. He mentioned order, so he obviously had an idea of what sequence meant, but definitely a good example of just that information in chapter one. Now in chapter two, I kind of marked my pages. In chapter two, one of the interesting comments that I really liked was where it said, the sequence of learning the meaning of words does not reside in innate human development. That is, our brains are not wired to acquire words in any given sequence. Now, I found that to be very interesting, considering like a lot of books that young students read are actually like leveled books, tiered, like a tiered system. Working in first grade, a lot of their books are very simple. The sight words that they already know. Obviously, they get a little more difficult as the semesters and year progresses. One of the big books, though, one of the favorite of all my students is Elephant and Piggy. I don't know why. These are very simple books, maybe because they're all able to read them. Maybe it's because actually one student said that he likes the characters because they're crazy. I don't know. Elephant and Piggy, that they're like gold in my class. So if they can get their hands on them, they will. But it's just a kind of an example of how we try to get students to learn in a certain way, even though probably don't have to, or a certain order, and we don't have to follow that order all the time. Along with those two chapters, I read the rest of it, but I wanted to talk more about the videos that I saw. Now, I actually watched the one where it talked about gorillas. It was third to fifth grade, I believe. The teacher was talking about Gorillas by Seymour Simon, where they had to go to another text to understand the book. I thought this was a great way to introduce, especially introduce like research-based writing, which I think students would get more into probably in later elementary school. Um, it also kind of showed and kind of brought to mind text sets that we learned about in children's lit, about how you kind of use one book and then kind of expand out and use other books. But obviously, in this instance, they would have to learn or actually use fact-based books instead of just kind of like in a text set. You can have poetry books, you can have other things, just to kind of incorporate with one other book and kind of its main idea. But I think you could also use that as kind of a way to gather information. And obviously, what the teacher is trying to get at is that sometimes authors assume that we know more than we do, and this allows students to catch up and kind of have a better understanding about the reading that has been taking place. And definitely interesting. It was a great example of what to do in that certain circumstance. But yeah, I really enjoyed that video. Also, in vocabulary, I watched the French Revolution video. It was a great attention getter. I wouldn't base my whole lesson around it, but definitely a good attention getter to get a lesson started. It was very visual, very funny, educational. I mean, it did sum up some of the main points of the French Revolution. However, it was done in rap form. I don't know if everybody's a big rap fan, but it was definitely entertaining. Like I said, it would be a great attention getter to get a lesson started off right. So that is a summary of some of the things I looked at, what I liked, what I enjoyed, and as for me, I think I am done, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.